Do we need the clerk? She'll be right back?
No, she's going home. She's ill.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you're going to record it? Okay.
Before you start.
We ready? Okay. All right, I'm officially opening the study session of December 15th, excuse me. And we usually start with public comment on items on the agenda. Do we have any public comment this evening? Yes, sir. Go ahead and use the microphone. Tell us your name and address.
Mayor Jay, City Council members, my name is Roger Morn, and I live at 3550 Miller Court in Wheat Ridge. I'd like to address item 4 in context to preventing accidents involving motor vehicles. The first regards accidents between vehicles and pedestrians. I'm concerned about the intersection at 38th and Kipling Street. Currently, traffic at that location is crazy because of construction. I presume traffic will remain heavy with the new Sprouts, drive-through Starbucks, and other stores. I think it was 2 years ago that a vehicle struck and killed a pedestrian at that intersection. I've seen many vehicle-on-vehicle accidents there too, since I live close by. Many Everett middle schoolers traverse this intersection to and from school. I've seen kids on bikes, skateboards, and crossing on red. It really can be hectic, especially when school lets out. One solution would be that the city build a pedestrian pathway it describes in its bicycle and pedestrian master plan connecting 38th Avenue and Kipling Street on a diagonal running alongside Lena Gulch and the Rec Center and ending at the crosswalk to Everett Middle School. The city rated this path high in 2010 when it generated the master plan. The pathway should rate higher now because of the area's revitalized commercial status and anticipated traffic. I think school kids would benefit most from this path by providing an alternative walk route to and from school and lessening opportunities for an accident at 38th and Kipling. I'd like to ask our city manager to comment on plans to build this particular path and if we can increase its priority. The other issue regards the prevention of DUI due to consumption of marijuana. Wheat Ridge has 5 retail marijuana shops and proposed ordinances that would allow production, import, and distribution of enough marijuana to support a demand 6 to 10 times in excess of Wheat Ridge's need. In other words, we have postured ourselves as the regional marijuana provider. I'd like to ask Chief Brennan if he has any specific concerns or strategies for addressing DUI related to marijuana. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Are there anyone else who wishes to comment on items that are on tonight's agenda?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Charlie Myers. I'm with the Wheat Ridge Advisory, or the Wheat Ridge Active Transportation Advisory Team, also with Bike Jeffco. And I wanted to make a comment on item 4, traffic accidents. And I believe the three that I know of probably prompted this study. Mostly they were from impaired, I guess you could put them in the category of impaired drivers. And so some might consider, well, there's nothing really we can do. So I think it's because, you can't change infrastructure and that sort of thing. We're talking about drivers that distracted, impatient, and also drunk. So, but I think it's very good that the council is really looking at this, and perhaps there is infrastructure and signage changes that can be made to where even maybe an impaired driver kind of comes to their senses and stops when they need to. I wanted to also mention that the Wheat Ridge Active Transportation Advisory Team is available to convene a forum, get public input, any way that you could see us helping in this area. We're available for that. Perhaps we should be looking at the bike ped master plan at this point and doing some revisions on that. So at any rate though, but we applaud the city council for really taking a serious look at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Good evening. I'm Rachel Haltine, and I'm a District 2 resident, and I'm also one of the officers of the Wheat Ridge Active Transportation Advisory Team, and I'm also Cade's mom. And, echoing a lot of what Charlie just said, as our community continues to grow and attract new families, residents, and businesses, we are only going to be seeing an increase of people on foot and on bike in our community. And while Wheat Ridge is taking great strides in addressing the built environment through investments like the multi-use trail on Kipling, trying to improve connections to the Clear Creek Trail, there are things that we can do now that aren't point specific. I agree 38th and Kipling is a huge need for improvement for safe crossings, especially since it services the park and the rec center and is a bridge between a lot of different school districts. But there are things that we can do that would service the whole community through outreach and enforcement that would help raise awareness for all of our road users, people behind the wheel, on wheels, and on foot. And as Charlie said, and as I've said before, we'd love to work with the city and the community to find ways that we can increase awareness and messaging around safe driving practices and safe cycling practices. All users need to understand how to share the road responsibly. And we're just really excited that Wheat Ridge continues to show an investment in trying to make its community safe for people of all ages and abilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak on any items that are on the agenda that aren't regularly scheduled? Looks not. So let's go ahead and move on to our meeting. The first item, Jefferson Area Innovation Plan. Mr. Patrick, are you?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. As you know, the Jefferson County Public Schools have released their Jefferson Area Innovation Plan this last week, and we invited them this evening to provide some more information to City Council on that. We have Superintendent Dan McMenemy here, and Terry Elliott, who's the Chief School Effectiveness Officer, and there's many other folks here too. I won't introduce all of them, but I'll let maybe Dan do that. So, Dan, you want to turn it over to you?
Thank you very much. My name is Dan McMenemy. I'm the superintendent for Jefferson County Schools. I appreciate the opportunity to come and present a proposal that we have for the Jefferson Area Articulation area to you this evening. There are some people that I want to introduce first because I hope there's going to be some questions at the end of this about what we're doing and why we're doing it. So in the back I have Ken Witt. He's our board chairman. And I have Jill Fellman over in this corner. She's also a member of our Board of Education. We have Brenda Carlson, who's an achievement director for us. And then we have several principals here from both the Wheat Ridge Articulation Area and the Jefferson Articulation Area. We have Jeff Gomez for Everett Middle School. We have Heather Stewart, who's the principal at Stevens Elementary School. Celeste Saltzy is the principal at Edgewater Elementary School. Griff Worth, the principal at Wheat Ridge High School. And so we appreciate them coming this evening as well. And between all of us, we probably have some good answers for you. That's what we're hoping for. So again, I'm Dan McMenemy. I'm the superintendent. I'm going to turn this over to Terry Elliott. He has been working directly with the principals in the articulation area. You know, one of the misnomers I think that's out there is that this was a top-down Board of Education-driven initiative, which is absolutely false. We had a group of principals in the Jefferson area at the beginning of the school year. Through some conversations, we decided that there's some things going on in that Jefferson articulation area that we'd like to see improved. And I think all of us in this room want to see improved outcomes for our students. So that was the genesis of this plan. Our building principals got together and started doing some research and talking about what could happen in our schools that would make a difference for all of our students. And so I'm going to let Terry Elliott speak a little bit about the plan, and then we'll be happy to answer questions. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here this evening.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, and it's always good when you can get up and present other people's brilliant ideas and it looks like they were yours. So, as Dan mentioned, this is the framework that was built by Jefferson area principals. And the idea was to build a framework and then take that out to the community and to our teachers and kind of flesh out the details of that framework to make it a plan that we would then take to the board for presentation. And that's now currently slated to occur in January, around mid-January with the board. So desired outcomes, you always want to start from the where do you want to see this go? And so the desired outcomes are pretty clear, and I think these are probably shared with all of our high schools throughout Jefferson County Public Schools, and that we want students graduating who are ready for either a career, a path into our armed services, or into college, whether it's a 2-year or 4-year certificate programs, and that we want them connected. And that's something we're really starting to look at. It's one thing for a kid to walk across the stage in May and receive their diploma. It's another for them to, the following fall, be engaged in that plan they had when they crossed our stage in May. So we want to make sure that the students not only are having those opportunities when they graduate, but they're actually connected and engaged in those opportunities the following fall after they've left our building. That's where the true success comes out. We want to provide instructional practice and supports for Jefferson area students. These students come to us and they're in a different situation, a different environment than students in other parts of our district. And we need to recognize and appreciate those unique needs to enable every child at each grade level to have at least a full year's worth of growth academically, as well as social and emotionally. And we need to realize that that focus for the Jefferson area is going to require us to think differently as a district and support those needs locally. So it won't be the same plan we're using throughout the district. What are the professional development needs? What are the particular programs that the school needs that other schools may not have within our district? So that's kind of some of the foundational thinking as we went to build out this plan. Our current reality is not what we would expect. While there's a lot of successes to celebrate in our Jefferson area schools, as a whole, student achievement is coming up short from what we would like for all of our students. Last year at the high school, we were able to move out of a turnaround status, but we're still not seeing the type of systemic success for all the students across our Jefferson area schools. With this year's state ratings, our Wheat Ridge 5-8 building now has 4 years under turnaround priority improvement status. The state gives you 5 years before they intervene. So with this year's 4th year, we recognize we have to act now in order for us to kind of drive our own future rather than letting somebody else come in and take a hold of the reins for us. And then our current structures aren't really aligned or enabling there to be good kind of aligned K-12 practices within the Jefferson area. We're operating as 6 schools, all trying to do similar things, as opposed to operating kind of as a collective whole and leveraging the strength of a lot of schools to purchase services, connect with different community outreaches, and leverage the strengths that we have as a collective group as opposed to individual buildings. So the drivers of our framework, and this is an important one. It seems simple, but any successful turnarounds start with this belief that all students can achieve at a high level. And it was interesting when we first wrote this out, we didn't have at a high level. And it was the principals who said, you know what, it's at a high level. It's not just that they can be successful, but they can be successful at the same level as every other student that we have high expectations for. We really do believe that there is a moral imperative for us to significantly change student outcomes in the area. We have to do everything we possibly can to create futures for these kids that right now don't seem possible in lots of ways. We believe that for this to be successful, we need to model high behavioral expectations and those expectations around lifelong learners as adults for the students so that they can see it and we can then hold them to those expectations that we're modeling for them. We need to focus on collaboration, which closely and constructively examines the instructional practices and the consequences of those practices. So we want a greater connection of teachers and teacher practices. We want teachers observing teachers, having discussions about their practices, making connections to the outcomes of their lessons directly related to what each other are observing. So really getting into a very narrow micro focus on classroom instruction, teacher to teacher. And then leveraging the resources that our community offers, that the district offers all of us to support staff and students. So we have 3 key elements to our plan, and I'm going through this very quickly. We'll take your questions, and I think the pre-work provided some additional information on this as well. So the first is people. If this is going to be successful, if we're going to have a successful turnaround, what the research will tell you is the number one most important factor is a highly qualified and engaged instructional leader in that classroom every day. So it is, we have to retain and be able to recruit highly qualified teachers in these classrooms. These are difficult jobs, they're challenging jobs, and when we have vacancies, we need to be able to go out and bring in individuals that are willing to engage in this work. There are also unique skill sets and strategies for these learners, and the teachers need to be able to, we need to be able to provide for them the training, the professional development embedded in their work at the school level to support their growth and being more effective as teachers in these buildings. We need to look at the area as a whole and what types of unique classroom supports. Easy things to think about are dual language paraeducational assistants. One of the things we're talking about is maybe looking at hiring full-time subs for the area. So these would be people that we would then take through all of our training programs and our professional development with teachers. They would participate in that so that when we needed a sub in a building, that sub would be current and knowledgeable in the instructional strategies we're employing in the area. And then obviously to leverage and coordinate those community resources that are available to us, both for the students, the families, as well as the school as a whole. The second is structures. A lot of different research out there about what structures are best for kids. And basically what it's coming down to is fewer transitions in a student's academic life are better than more transitions. So one of the aspects of this plan is to move it to a single, one-time transition. A student ideally would enter kindergarten, pre-K into an elementary, be there for 6 or 7 years, and then have a transition into the high school, and it would be a 7-12 experience. That allows greater relationship building with that student. For that 7th grade student, they now have a vision or a line of sight to graduation and goals. They have positive role models for them in that building. And then we have the ability to wrap some services around them by leveraging 7, 12, 6 grades as opposed to, say, a middle school model of 2 grades for that student. So we would be creating the Jefferson High School, which would be kind of a pre-college career academy focused building. And then for Stevens, the 5, 6 graders that are currently in the Wheat Ridge 5-6 building would return essentially to Stevens Elementary to continue their education there. And then finally, programming. So looking at, are there specific programs, curricular programs, that we should kind of develop and employ or secure and implement in the area. And kind of the 2 key points, or the 2 highlights for this, enhance academic language development, and that needs to be a K-12 strategy. So a lot of times these students are not coming from an enriched language environment in their daily lives, and when they walk into our schools, we need to identify the opportunities to close that gap that they're not getting at home that other students might. And so it's developing language programs that are both spoken as well as written, not talking dual language, but just academic vocabulary development as well. And then finally, looking at the 7-12 building, we know that a lot of these students are students that have very good problem-solving skills. Their lives have helped them to learn a lot about determination and persistence, and we want to leverage that through a problem learning or problem-based learning program, or pedagogy, if you will, how we teach and how we instruct using problems to help them access the academic curriculum as well. So that's the framework of the plan that we will flesh out further with staff and community. Kind of the next 3 to 6 weeks is to get that community input as well as staff input, and then we will go to the board with a finalized plan for the board to consider, and then hopefully begin implementation for the 2016 or 15-16 school year. So that was a quick overview of the framework.
Okay. What questions can we answer for you, or any clarifications? Yes.
So I have, this is like stuck there. I have a quick question. So this past year, I had the opportunity to attend a seminar in Washington, D.C., and I went to one of the seminars around schools and education. And one of the things they talked about, which really I thought made a lot of sense is they called one of their action plans was it was like an ABC, and it was based off of looking at students and their success, and if students aren't succeeding, where are they falling short? And the ABCs stood for absenteeism, behavior. I think the last one was curriculum, but what I definitely remember was the absenteeism and behavior. And I guess it's from what I've seen and what I've heard, that is a huge problem in our school system, in our society, socially, that perhaps families, children, parents need support in these areas. And when you're looking at some of these plans, do you have any, a lot of this was focused on the classroom and this is what we're going to do and et cetera, but is there focus around perhaps as a community what we can do to help, if it means me as a neighbor making sure my little neighbor child gets to school and I walk him to school on days that mom works late or dad works late, and are there any kind of programs, or are you looking at those types of things? Because I think that's, from what I understand, a big issue.
Well, you know what, you're right on with that, and we know that that's one of the challenges, and that is one of the data points that we put together. We have some extended data that we could share if you're interested that was in a PowerPoint that we shared with staff members, but there was information there about attendance, there was information there about behaviors, and those two things have a direct impact on what's going on in the classroom. I think there's a couple different ways to talk about that. First of all, absolutely, the community has to be engaged in that discussion of how can we get kids to school. But I think the other piece is, once they're there, if you have an engaging curriculum that they can see a future in and can project themselves of, being a part of a problem-solving team or seeing what the focus of their studies is going to get them in the end, I think that is really powerful. And that's one of the reasons why our principals put forward a 7-12 model, is because you can start talking to students in 7th grade about their future and start doing things with bringing in outside resources to get them focused on, all right, if this is what you want to do, what do you need to do over the next 6 years? And I think that's one of the exciting things that our principals really looked at, is how can we bring all of those resources to one place that can draw to bear on these students and provide a pathway for them that they can clearly see and clearly use in classrooms to make sure that they're moving to the place that they want to be. But you are absolutely right. What other interventions from outside can we bring into place? And so we're working very closely with Joel Newton and the Edgewater Collective, and he has outlined a plan from, he calls it cradle to career. And so he's taken care of a lot of the early childhood interventions, or the even before students are at school intervention pieces. And then we're talking about the school piece, but he also has a lot of community organizations that want to step forward that we would like to bring bear on Jefferson Pre-Collegiate Academy to get these students to see that it's so much bigger than what happens in the classroom, and help provide them focus.
But I guess one of my questions is like, what support? Like, I think you're right, if you get the students there, but I think a lot of it is getting them there. So, are there any discussions, any kind of, working with PTAs to,
Exactly. So one of the-
outreach and that type of thing?
So when we talked about earlier there, when we talked about getting involved with the community resources, that's the reason that's on there, is it's looking at how do we engage the parent community, how do we engage various parent liaisons or parent engagement specialists within the district, multi-language resources to go out and communicate with families, to bring them in. A lot of our principals will do different things. They'll have breakfast for their PTA meetings in order to draw more parents in. And so the principals have actually identified various strategies that they're finding success with. Those will be shared collectively and then employed throughout. So that is a key focus of the plan. Right.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. We can't hear you. You're not being a part of the that must be Brenda over there, right?
It's correct.
It's not in the record. Okay.
All right. So what's being?
Okay.
They have what?
Parent liaisons.
Okay, parent liaison. Okay, so we have both attention to attendance as well as enrichment when they get there, so the attendance problem is lessened a little bit. That's part of your plan. Other discussions?
Well, I have some questions. I'm as a parent in the Jefferson School District and loving everything that, that brings to my child. My understanding of Jefferson High School, and I could be wrong, that they have a high incidence of homelessness. And how does this kind of impact the homelessness? Wait, oh, that's okay. No. So Jefferson High School, my understanding, has a high incident of homelessness, probably above average. It does go back to absenteeism, but I mean, it's not just that. It's that the feeling of security, knowing that you have a place to stay, that really can mentally impact a student. Is that something that gets addressed?
Yes, it does. So one of the key aspects is if the school is a safe, welcoming environment, students are more likely to come and engage. And we think that the 6 years there helps to really promote that and create a family sense in that building, and is part of one of the reasons for that particular model.
But is there, I mean, and I get that, and I believe in the getting there part, but the going home at night, a place to do homework safely, a place that isn't someone's car or couch or
And what kind of, right, so are there extended programs we could be offering? Is there extended hours that we can be offering? How do we keep our library open longer? Those types of things.
And then, sorry, I'll just ask one more and then I'll let other people go and then work my way back. So we were talking about the problem-solving aspect of engaging students that wouldn't normally, but you have that part of it, but you also probably have some of the non-traditional learners. I have a child that's a non-traditional learner, and engaging them is much more challenging sometimes because the intelligence is there. It's just trying to find ways to get it out. Maybe they're not in a situation where they problem solve on a daily basis, but how do you get them to be as equal a partner in their learning experience? Is there?
So again, you're starting to talk about instructional strategies that the teachers would be employing, and that's part of that embedded PD we're talking about, professional development. When I say PD, I'm referring to professional development. So that would be part of, if it's one of our identified initiatives at the school level, and we're going to try and we're going to do less, but we're going to do less better. Is kind of the focus we're going to take, and it's the principals and the teachers that are going to identify what has shown to be highly effective for the population as they've been working through it. Like I said, we have a lot of schools that have had success in the area, and so we just kind of want to take those pockets of excellence and make it the standard of excellence in the area, and so that would obviously be part of that.
Thank you.
And I think a big part of problem-based learning is having students have an opportunity to see how what they're learning is relevant to their future. So not only taking knowledge, but taking that knowledge and using it in new and innovative ways is a key element of that creates that connection to the curriculum and creates the relevance that students need in order to engage in education.
And I agree. I believe that if they see the future at hand, they're going to be more willing to find a way to get there, even if their parents don't quite get them there, find a way to be engaged during the class. So I appreciate this renewal effort in looking at our schools and ensuring they all succeed.
So it's more using the student's own initiative. I have Genevieve, or I believe she had her hand up first.
Go ahead if you have a question. Okay.
I am the chair of the Wheat Ridge Education Alliance, and we've been meeting since April, and we've been meeting with principals. Jill is on our committee, and many other principals on our immediate committee, Griff and Jeff Gomez, Warren Blair, and Heather Stewart. And this plan, of course, is a new plan, and you're developing it, and we understand that. And I'd like to thank you for coming here tonight to help explain this and answer questions. I'd also like to thank Mr. Witt for attending tonight, and Jill also for coming. And as this plan is going to directly affect Wheat Ridge, as we're essentially losing a middle school, additional plan or proposal has come forward through members of the Education Alliance. And if the council is agreeable, I'd like to invite Chad Har and Guy Namiach to the table to describe a little bit about the plan that impacts Wheat Ridge in addition to this plan that they're proposing. This plan for Edgewater, it makes sense to me in that it keeps the Edgewater residents and children within somewhat of their own articulation area, and it does address many of the needs that they have voiced in the past and the concerns that they have. And Mr. Newton has done a lot of work to address the early childhood education and a lot of the different factors that are coming to their community for the student performance, how many students they have that are free and reduced lunch, and their need for performance in their schools. And this in turn affects us because our schools, Stevens and Wheat Ridge 5-8, we're part of that articulation area. So I don't know what kind of question you have, but if after that, if Guy and Chad could come to the table and describe the plan.
Is council comfortable with that?
Okay.
I would be okay with that. But I do have a couple questions.
You have some questions, fine.
What is the timeline for the repurposing of Stevens under this proposal?
Well, the plan was for the 15-16 school year is what we were going to try to make all of these things happen for the 15-16 school year. And so moving Wheat Ridge 5-8, moving the 7th and 8th graders into Jefferson, taking the 5th and 6th graders and leaving them at Wheat Ridge 5-8 and bringing Stevens Elementary School into Wheat Ridge 5-8.
And then the Stevens facility, what is the timeline for repurposing that facility?
Well, I think our timeline again was the 15-16 school year to see all the things that we needed to do. And the initial thought was around taking Sobeski Academy as possibly being a school that would move into the Stevens facility. It's a newer facility than the current Sobeski Academy. But again, there's a lot of opportunities for input between here and making the final decision that our board will consider in January.
Well, I guess my other concern related to that is I understand we have sort of a temporary use set up for Martinson Elementary with respect to our security training and whatnot for police and first responders, and I think that's a good temporary use, but we still don't have a long-term use for the other school that's been shut down in Wheat Ridge, and now we're moving on to closing other schools. So I'd like there to be some sort of commitment that we have an active plan involving the community as it relates to these large swaths of land that are being disrupted. And it does disrupt the neighborhood when that happens, and through that process as well, that they have to be mindful of going to public meetings and that type of thing. So it's a bit concerning to me that we're moving on to shuffling the deck in other areas when we still have other properties in Wheat Ridge that have impacted the community. So I'd like for there to be a strong commitment that a solid plan for Martinson is included in this, because it does seem as though there is a exodus out of Wheat Ridge of Jeffco schools as far as the active learning part of it. I understand Martinson is still a facility of Jeffco, but it's that active learning and that community aspect that you so desire in these schools that is then taken out of our community when those schools close. So I want that to be a significant part of this plan so that we as the community feel comfortable continuing to have a good relationship with the school district.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Excuse me, I have two questions. Thank you very much for coming to talk to us, and I appreciate your focus on the students, because we need focus on the students. But I have some concerns. For one thing here, you talk about initial pathways for secondary student identification. To me, what that sounds like is you're going to identify diverging pathways for students. In fact, even the name of the school that you're thinking about is Career or Pre-Collegiate Academy. So are some kids going to be identified as career fodder right at the very beginning?
No, it's to create options for the student choice. It's a student choice focus. So some students will come to our building. Sorry, hit the button there. Some students may come and want an ROTC experience. Some may want to come and do a community college experience. Some may want to be looking at, we'd like to have the opportunity to fulfill whatever their desired pathways are. We wouldn't identify them in the early grades at all. They would go through our, essentially a curriculum that would prepare them for the state graduation requirements, which in a sense prepares them for post-secondary education, whether that's a 2-year or 4-year. However, we know that not all students are immediately ready to go to those types of studies, and we want to make sure that we have opportunities for them to have some post-secondary options outside of the college track as well.
Okay, the second thing is, do Wheat Ridge 5-8 kids currently go to Wheat Ridge High School or Jefferson High School?
The majority go to Jefferson, and the students that reside in the Stevens, our school boundary are Wheat Ridge students, Wheat Ridge High School students.
But they would be, in essence, funneled into Jefferson High School.
No, they would still have the Wheat Ridge boundary, so they would be a priority student into the Wheat Ridge feeder, as a feeder student into Wheat Ridge High School. And then we would anticipate that Jefferson would welcome them as well. And again, which is essentially the same situation they have today after they complete 8th grade at Wheat Ridge 5-8.
Just a comment. I know that your vision is a county-wide vision. My vision is a city-wide vision. And I would like our kids to have the opportunity to identify with Wheat Ridge as their home city and feel a loyalty to our city. I don't think of us as being Jefferson area at all. We're Wheat Ridge. So I'm a little, I wonder what's going to happen to Wheat Ridge High School if some of these kids are funneled away to Jefferson.
So let me clarify that. The kids that are currently at Stevens, as I understand it, that is a Wheat Ridge articulation school. So those students would then be housed at Wheat Ridge 5-8, K through 6, would then be housed at Wheat Ridge 5-8. That articulation area, from what I understand, would still be to Wheat Ridge High School as it currently exists right now. So there wouldn't be a split of those student bodies anymore where we have Stein or Lumberg students that are coming to Wheat Ridge 5-8 and then they're going back to Jefferson. They would go directly from their elementary school to Jefferson would be the plan.
Mr. Starker.
So if I understand that correctly, you would, in the 7th grade, decide what high school you were going to go to, because you would be going from Stevens Elementary, housed at Wheat Ridge 5-8 building, but you're going into 7th grade, you'd go to Jefferson High School?
Well, if you think about the current...
Or would you go to Jefferson High School for 7th and 8th grade and then go to Wheat Ridge High School?
You could do that. That could be an option. And that would be the standard track, would be 7-8 at Jefferson, and then into Wheat Ridge High School for 9-12. As currently students, or you could go to Everett, you could choice enroll into Everett, which I think has plenty of room and would be welcoming to those students as well.
And then I had another couple of questions. Thank you very much for coming tonight and presenting this. My day job is in the construction industry, and we've had nothing over the last 20 years if we haven't talked about workforce development. Do any of these ideas address workforce development?
Yes, so when we talk about a career college, multiple pathways, those are the types of things we would be looking at. What types of programs would we be offering to students where they may be able to have a meaningful start to a career right out of high school as well as potential for college?
Would you be able to develop construction trades and other trade?
Those are the things that we would be open to. It'll take a few years to get some of those open up. We work closely with Red Rocks as well as Warren Tech and identify what opportunities make sense to be housed at the Jefferson area to feed the local economy here.
And as part of this plan, would the district be willing to allocate significant additional dollars to this program in terms of per pupil funding?
I think what we'll look at is what do we need to do effectively, and then making sure those dollars are there. I don't think it requires a significant infusion of additional dollars. It's using those dollars that we currently have in a focused manner on strategies that are proving to increase student achievement, as opposed to just a lot of money and a lot of programs.
And there are additional dollars that are given to the Jefferson area right now in the form of Title I that are additional dollars over and above the state per pupil revenue that other schools get. So we have a differentiated system for our schools to be funded based on the types of students they have. If they're high at-risk students, there's additional dollars allocated to them. There's a base dollar amount that every student gets from the state of Colorado that comes through us. So we already have a differentiated model for that. There may be some additional capital needs that we have to address to retrofit the building or to put some special programming in there. But that's the same thing that we would do for any of our schools. As they bring additional programming concerns or questions to us, we're going to work individually with schools in a one-size-fits-one fashion, as opposed to, we're going to do everything the same for every single school. Each one of our schools is unique and has unique situations that they're trying to deal with. I mean, you walk into Wheat Ridge High School, Principal Worth is doing some different things than they're doing at Chatfield High School, than they're doing at Ralston Valley. And so we're trying to provide them an opportunity, a vehicle through a differentiated budgeting process to meet those needs of students within their community and their building.
And I guess I had one more question. I'm a little unsure, and I'm not in the education business, but how do you, what do you define the boundaries of, say, the Jefferson area as opposed to the Wheat Ridge High School area?
Well, those articulation, there's a map that we've developed, or, well, I guess the Jefferson and Wheat Ridge split has been as long as when I was a student at Lakewood High School in this area. And so we have articulation boundaries. Currently, the majority of students attending Wheat Ridge 5-8 are Jefferson boundary articulation area students, with the exception of those students that attend Stevens. The rest are matriculate up through the Jefferson articulation area. So we have articulation areas developed by boundaries, geographical boundaries.
And so I think the other thing to consider is it's changed a lot since when we were in school. When you lived at a specific address, you were assigned to a school, and that's the only school you could go to. With Colorado Open School Access now, any student can go to any school that they want to. Now, they have to provide their own transportation, which creates a whole other barrier for students. But we have students in our district that they may live in the boundary of one school and attend another based on what their needs are. So we have students that live in the Jefferson boundary that go to Wheat Ridge, or we have students that live in the Wheat Ridge boundary that go to Lakewood. And so we have kids that go all over the place. So the boundary is a starting place, and that's usually where the transportation is provided within that boundary. But we're also exploring ways of how can we provide other alternatives for students based on what students' needs are rather than what zip code they live in. So it's a little bit different world than it was when we were all growing up, where you live here, that's your elementary school, that's your middle school, that's your high school. That said, statistics show that 80 to 85%, the last number I saw, 80 to 85% of students attend the school that's within their boundary. And so there's about 15% that are choicing outside of that.
Mr. DiTullio.
Thanks for coming tonight. I think the idea has some merits, and I understand what you're trying to do, especially with the different options for education. So I teach at Wheat Ridge High School, and we have that same situation all the time with kids looking at different career paths versus an AP classes versus career type of program. So can you explain what the idea was? You said maybe Sebeski Academy would be going to Stevens Elementary?
That was one of the initial plans that we thought to propose out there, and the reason is because the Sebeski Academy building is one of our older buildings that needs significant retrofitting. I mean, it's still useful in terms of being a facility, but we want to try to move to a different facility if we can. So that was one possible proposal that could come of this.
Well, I see the benefit of that, but I think right away when people heard Sebeski through the community, they're thinking Sebeski is a Montview or a family crisis center in Denver, and they're afraid that these students are going to somehow wreak havoc in the neighborhood. So I was wondering if you could explain what Sebeski really is and what its purpose is. And we have those students at Wheat Ridge High School that come from Sebeski to Wheat Ridge High School. And could you maybe just explain what Sebeski is and where they're located and the age of that building? Because that's the old McLean building, correct?
Correct.
20th
And that building's been around a very long, I don't know the specific age of it, but it's been around a long time. Sebeski students are students who need special services that have a difficult time operating in a regular classroom environment. And so we can provide wraparound services, special education services, mental health, behavioral health, or related type of services for those students with the idea of transitioning them back into their neighborhood high school. So the goal is that they can come in there, we can stabilize, support, close their gaps in learning, and then have them back to their neighborhood schools. As you know, sometimes it's a phased-in approach where they spend part of their day at Sebeski and another part of the day at their other school.
That's what I wanted to clarify. It's not a lockdown facility.
Oh, no, it's not a lockdown. It's not a detention facility. It's not a McLean.
These students are not
I'm sorry.
to anybody in the neighborhood or at the school. They're basically going to be brought back into the fold to the public school once they go through their, like you said, special education issues or family issues, kind of like what we were talking about earlier too. So I just wanted to clarify that this is not Sebeski is not a bad school to have in the area if that's what it ends up being there.
Right. It's an important service we provide in the district for our students.
Thank you.
How many are students and where is it currently located? About.
28th and Kipling, I was trying to think, is it 26 or 20? It's just I'm sorry?
2001 Hoyt Street?
Right, just before Kipling.
Okay.
And I do not know their current student population. But the school is. Current population at Sebesky? So the
About
300. So the population is 300, but it's younger students too, not just high school.
I
It's,
believe Ms. Wooden has a question, and then I would like to bring that
can I,
up to
can I
gentlemen.
finish on this?
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So basically, the school is about 300 students, and it's K through 12 or? First grade. So first grade through 12, so it's not all high school kids. Thank you for the clarification.
Ms. Wooden?
Going back to what you commented on before regarding if a Wheat Ridge family goes to Stevens, that when they reach 7th grade, we would like to provide a continuity to Wheat Ridge families. We'd like to provide an excellent education to Wheat Ridge families that stays in Wheat Ridge. And so those students should have the opportunity to stay within Wheat Ridge, not move around, and that's what part of this plan is doing, preventing students from moving around from city to city and providing continuity that helps with their educational goals. If possible, if we could bring up Chad and Guy to discuss
Yeah, is
the
Council ready for
additional
that, or would you
plan.
like, yeah, Christie?
So earlier you were talking about rolling this information out to parents, and how are you doing that? So how are you getting feedback?
Sure.
What's the plan for that?
So we've already sent out information to the parents through their local schools, through the 6 existing schools. We are conducting a kind of an information similar to this, a little bit probably more detailed than tonight, on Thursday night for families in the area. And then we've scheduled 3 community conversations together to specifically gather input. And so we'll work some opportunities to have some interchange and idea exchanging with the community during those community events. And they're scheduled both. We have a morning one, we have and a couple in the evening as well. We're going to have translators there, and we're using our parent engagement personnel to try and reach out to make sure the community is aware of this, they understand when the dates and times are, and get as many people to attend as possible. Madam Chair.
Mr. DiTullio had one more question.
Well, I guess I need to understand, I mean, we have this, on the agenda was the Jefferson Area and Innovation Plan from the school district, and they're bringing forth a plan that they're going to take out to the community. So I don't understand what Chad Har and Guy Namiash are going to bring forward. Is this something new that nobody's heard of before? Has these folks heard of this plan before? Or what's the purpose of them coming in now rather than later when we have more details on this plan? I just need to understand why we're...
Sure. Sure. It's not going off the agenda. It's part of the agenda in that this plan, how it affects Wheat Ridge, and how some suggestions have come forward that should be discussed at the beginning of this process and should be discussed as an option as part of this process going forward. It is a proposal, it is some extra ideas that we have to advocate for our city, to advocate for our students, to advocate for gifted and talented programs within our city, to advocate for not having another Martinson. For all of these issues, we'd like to bring this forward as part of the Wheat Ridge Education Alliance and bring it forward as an additional proposal as part of this plan because of how it affects our city.
So this is the first time anybody's heard this proposal?
No.
From the district?
No. They have heard it.
These two gentlemen, Mr. Min, have discussed this already, and this is just introducing more information.
Well, I want to be clear, this is not part of our plan. This is an outgrowth of the community that want to share an additional consideration for us. Our plan was a proposal around the Jefferson plan, and we did receive word last week that there were some people that wanted to talk about some additional pieces that would be added to that, or to be considered for that, for our board to consider as we move forward with this discussion. So this is not driven from the district at all. At this point, it's another idea from our community that, we're fine listening to it and see where we go from there.
Just one last question.
Yes, Mr. Urban.
You mentioned briefly about the community engagement aspect of seeking input, and you've reached out to the parents of the students in the schools. What specific tactics are being taken to inform the community about these meetings and the ability to provide input? Is there mailings going out to the surrounding neighborhoods, or how is that being handled?
So right now, the plan has been, or the communication outreach has been specifically targeted to the families attending that are involved in the schools, including the preschools in the area as well. So we'll be posting those on our Jefferson County Facebook pages and various community newsletters that we send out from the district. You bring up a great point of maybe making sure that we reach out to non-Jeffco channels in order to make sure a wider array. So we could probably work on getting some flyers produced and put up in some of the community centers and sharing those as well. We'll work with our communications people on that.
Glad to help you with that. I just want to
Great.
make sure that it's understood that there's more to this community than just the parents that are affected by it. It's the neighbors and the surrounding communities that have no channels to understand that this is going on, except to maybe flip on Channel 8 and hear us talking.
Sure.
So that's what I want to make sure is that there are a significant number of young families in eastern Wheat Ridge who are making plans and who have purchased homes relative to the existing situation. So it's important that they be involved in this as well.
It's a great point. Thank you.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Tell me I'm wrong. I'm hearing you say this plan that you're presenting to us is sort of a fait accompli, and you're going to the board just for implementation in January?
Now, the way we've been explaining, this is the framework. We want to work with our communities and our parents, our teachers, et cetera, to kind of finalize the plan based upon that input. And then we would take it to our board for their input as well as approval.
So this is open for discussion and change?
Correct.
I believe you set a date of 15/16, so it sounds like you've certainly planned for some community input as well of all of the staff.
Well, I
teachers, et
think,
cetera.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
No problem.
You know, for us, there's a sense of urgency here. I mean, there's students that are in a situation right now where we feel like we need to start moving forward. So you're absolutely right. We are open for input. We want to have the best possible plan, but we also want to be able to go to our board in the middle of January and say, here's where we are right now. What do you think? What could we improve? What is your position moving forward? So not a done deal. We thought it was important to have a little bit of transparency around this because you know as well as I do, the minute we walked out and started talking about it, we wanted to make sure that we had a lot of people included in that discussion. And so that's why we're here tonight, and that's why we'll continue to be out in the community and appreciate the feedback around who else could we be talking to.
Okay, can I bring Mr. Har and Mr. Namiachi to the table? These are citizens who are very active members of the Wheat Ridge School Alliance Committee, and I believe they want to, they're not rising. Would I have to drag? You've hurt their feelings, I think.
Okay, I think our plan addresses a lot of you guys' concerns and ideas and thoughts. One of the things that we really got thinking about was, this is probably not, you're closing an elementary school where we already have an elementary school closed 4 blocks away that was closed, and now it's become a police SWAT training facility, which really isn't beneficial to the neighborhood I live in, I live about 5 blocks from there, and I know that our city councilman does too. Zach lives just a couple of blocks from there. And so we really got thinking about what is going to be best for our city, our citizens, our students, and getting them to graduation and getting them the best education possible. So it was really kind of a grassroots, ground-up idea, and we have spent the time and talked to Griff Worth at Wheat Ridge High School, Barb over at Manning. We've been talking to, who else have we talked to? Jeff Gomez. So we really have been talking to all the area principals about this idea. And I think it's an opportunity for Wheat Ridge. We know that Wheat Ridge 5-8 has struggled within Wheat Ridge, as we know that the choice out numbers from Wheat Ridge residents and Wheat Ridge families is very high. Very few of our citizens and our families actually send their children there. And we also know that the choice out numbers at Stevens are fairly high from Wheat Ridge families living on the east side of Wheat Ridge. So we came up with this idea And I think we have a lot of support for it, and I think a few of them are sitting here tonight. And so we just wanted to have more of a discussion about another idea, another thought that benefits Wheat Ridge, and to think about Wheat Ridge as Edgewater is thinking about their city. We need to really think about our city and our families and our citizens and our students' educations. And like Tim Fitzgerald said, keeping Wheat Ridge students in Wheat Ridge, building on that history that is Wheat Ridge High School, building on that, you started in elementary school in Wheat Ridge, you go to Wheat Ridge Middle School, and you finish at a Wheat Ridge High School. And to be honest with you, that's what most Wheat Ridge families do. That's what my family does. We choiced out of Wheat Ridge Middle School, we went to Wheat Ridge High School.
We have a lot of young families moving into Wheat Ridge, but they're not sending their kids to Wheat Ridge schools. We have numbers that are, we have over 400 kids that should be going to Wheat Ridge High that are not. We have a lot of, the majority of our ALP or advanced learners or gifted and talented students that are coming out of Prospect Valley or even Maple Grove and then going to Creighton. And from Creighton, they're going down to Lakewood IB. And it's really hard to compete with that. And by putting them on a track that stays right here in Wheat Ridge and bringing in these advanced programs into our schools, we're assuring that, A, our families are keeping their kids right here in Wheat Ridge for all reasons, for socioeconomic reasons, for advanced learning programs, but we're also going to be able to attract those Highland mommies to bring their kids into Wheat Ridge, into our schools, and perhaps even move into Wheat Ridge. So we're talking about sustainability and down the road promoting our town as the choice town for maybe not only that mid-century house, but that quality education. And so after speaking to a lot of leaders in our community, principals, teachers, thanks for coming tonight, and members of the school board, and our own city, our Wheat Ridge Education Alliance, we wanted to kind of shuffle things around. And one of the first things is Wheat Ridge 5A, that building. What we're proposing is that Stevens stays where Stevens is. And if Stevens is cracking at the seams, then perhaps a K through 3 back in Martinson. And for Everett to move into that Wheat Ridge 5-8 building, an amazing building, except that we added a piece to it. It becomes a GT program, perhaps even a STEM school that's going to attract even more families from the area. Now, here's the part that's a little bit of a leap of faith. So now what do we do with the Everett building? We bring Manning into that Everett building. Manning has been a school that accommodates maybe 230, 250.
Right now, Manning has 450 students that go to Manning. Of that 450 students, they're all option kids. They're all choice kids. They all come from all over the district. So it's not really a neighborhood school other than about 55 students per class come from Maple Grove. And we know that Maple Grove is bursting at the seams, and we also know that Manning is bursting at the seams, and Manning needs more space for students. They have a waiting list right now of over 100 kids wanting to get into Manning. So one of the thoughts is that Maple Grove then becomes a K through 3, and Manning becomes a 4 through 6. It was originally a elementary school to begin with. So this fills all of those schools. We don't close any school, and possibly we reopen a school. And I think it gives lots of options to the families within Wheat Ridge. It keeps people in their neighborhoods and neighborhood schools. And we basically provide for all the new young families that are moving into Wheat Ridge and looking for schools. We already have a lot of young families moving into the east side of Wheat Ridge who are choicing out of schools on the east side of Wheat Ridge. They're moving to Prospect Valley. I can name on my street 5 families that do not go to Stevens Elementary. They all go to Prospect Valley, Wilmore Davis, Mountain Phoenix, but none of them attend that feeder school because they don't want their kids to go to Stevens and then to Wheat Ridge 5-8 and then to Jefferson.
If I may inject here, for city council tonight, I think our goal was information, both the plan that you're discussing as well as a suggestion to it or an alternate. And this is incredibly informative for us. We probably want to let you know, you'll have continued meetings and discussions and citizen input. Is there some questions that the council would like to ask of this alternate plan, or do we have significant information to kind of know what's going on educationally in our city and how we can support it? Ms. Davis?
So I was just curious, since they're having these meetings, are you guys going to go to the meetings?
We've been going, yeah. So last week we went to a Stevens meeting, and Thursday night will be the Wheat Ridge 5A. We'll definitely be there, and so forth. I mean, it's really important. You know, for the first time, usually these plans come out all laid out, full of details, explanation, but the community is left out. This is a real opportunity. You know, there's a lot of people that are complaining, well, I can't be on board because I don't have all the answers. This is your chance to participate in getting those answers. I think we're really lucky. We really are that we're involved in this process. So we'll definitely be there in all those meetings.
Mr. Hearn?
Yeah, I guess to that point, it appeared to me through the Martinson closing process that there was that same community input opportunity, and at the same time there was some sort of stay of execution through that process whereby Martinson was stayed for a year or so, and then it was then closed. And so my concern is that we've been dealing with these types of shuffling of schools and different methods that are being tried, and I'm not one to question the way that this educational theory is developed. That's why you guys get paid what you get paid to do that. That's not our concern. Our concern is more the geographics of it, the locationality and the community that you so desire to wrap that school around and be supportive of those schools. But we can't do that if the shuffling continues and we continue to have these type of issues. I think what the gentlemen are presenting, it does seem like a more inclusive plan for Wheat Ridge and does take into consideration what we need. And it seems like Wheat Ridge had about a 5-year period where we didn't have a whole lot of kids coming through the system. And then all of a sudden, Jeffco looked over and said, well, I guess Wheat Ridge doesn't need any schools anymore, and moved on. That's a very, rough blush of it. But to me, it seems like there should be a longer term view of what Wheat Ridge needs as far as schools. And that's the fact is younger families are coming in, and the last thing I want to see have happen is young families choose to move out of Wheat Ridge because what they really need is good education, and I want to make sure that that continues to be the case. So that would be my main concern.
Thank you, Mr. Urban.
The numbers are alarming. There's 448 kids that should be going to Wheat Ridge High that are not. There's 276 kids that were supposed to be going to Wheat Ridge 5A and that aren't. There's 289 kids that were supposed to be going to Everett that aren't. 224 kids that are supposed to be going to Colorstrand that are not. And 194 kids that are supposed to be going to Stevens that are not. And it just goes on. And we need to create this track. For whatever reason, they loop out of this track. And by closing that circle between Stevens, Everett, Wheat Ridge High, they stay in that city and giving them access to, all of the programs that all kids need. This city is for everybody. It's not just for advanced learners, free and reduced. It's for everybody. It's an inclusive town. But to do that, we need to create that track that keeps them inside.
And we've all had meetings and conversations about Wheat Ridge and what is Wheat Ridge. And we all want, I've not heard one person say, I don't want that small town feel in Wheat Ridge. And this really loops us back into that small town feel. All the elementaries will go to a middle school, and then they'll go to the high school. And that is our goal, is to create that town, that feel that we want as a city. And I think Edgewater is doing the same thing. They're looking at what is best for their citizens and trying to create that vision for them. And we, as a city, should really step up and do the same thing and create that vision for our students and our citizens.
Do we have any other questions from council? Genevieve?
It's not a question, it's more of a comment. I would just like to echo Mr. Urban's thoughts regarding Martinson and what happened with Martinson, in that there was a lot of unhappy feelings in our city over how that transpired and the closing of that school. And now it's being used as a police training facility, which I think we all understand in this day and age is a necessary, unfortunate necessary location that we'd have to have for that kind of training. However, if next in our city, if we see some transitions like this, and then another school being plopped into our town without consideration of what the city's asking for, I think we'll continue to have some feelings that, what is Wheat Ridge to the school district? Is it a community that isn't standing up for ourselves? And I think we're saying to you, we want to stand up for Wheat Ridge schools, for Wheat Ridge citizens, and we very much want to be part of the discussion. And we don't want to be the city that just had pieces moved around, and in the end, we did have citizens that were not happy with the outcome. So I'd have to echo what Zach just said and just say this is an effort for us to advocate for our schools, to advocate for our city, to advocate for how we want our schools to be represented to our citizens. So thank you for coming tonight.
Anyone want to add to that?
I think we as a council, during the Martinson closure, did offer up a resolution related to
Yes, we did.
our position. I would encourage us to look at something like that. Again,
Once again,
it's not the
right.
city's job to deal with the learning aspects of the district, but it is our job to concern ourselves with the schools in our community and how those interact. So that's what I would like to try to find a resolution
Yeah,
around
I
that.
think we do have more city-school connection at this time. Thank you, Genevieve, and you guys as well, for being a part of that, so that there is more concern, more opportunity, and this is why I think we're sharing in some of this information, which is really critical to our city, and as of course, our citizens. I believe we will keep and stay informed and keep voicing our opinion as well. Mr. Minnick.
Well, I would just like to say we really appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening, and I think it's really exciting that we're all talking about student growth and achievement and worried about what's going on in our schools. And, that was some interesting information that was just shared, and we're going to go back and look at what the implications are. But we're interested in having great schools across 155 schools in this huge county. And so absolutely heard what you said this evening and appreciate the opportunity to be here to answer your questions and look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you both very much, as well as several people who have attended. Anyone else? Nope, we're done with that subject? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. You ready to? Daniel isn't here.
No, he's
Oh, yeah, Joe's here. Joe's right here.
He's snug up there.
Yeah. Chief Brennan would be normally giving us this, but Joe, you're going to be doing it for us?
Yes.
Regionalized records management, is that what we're after now?
My portion of this discussion is in regards to the regionalization of the records management system
Okay,
for the department.
all right.
Thank you, Mayor.
Joe, your last name? Just give it for the record.
Oh, my name is Joe Casa. I'm the Division Chief for the Wheat Ridge Police Department. My current assignment is the Support Services Division. The records management system is within my division, and for a number of years now, the police department has been considering a regionalized effort towards a records management system. As you know, police records, we have copies, we have reports of everything that goes on within the department, from case reports to supplemental reports to really a lot of the activities that we do at the police department are reflected in official criminal justice records within the records section of the department. We also have, and it's very common for agencies to not only have a records management system, but to have a computer-aided dispatch system along with a mobile field reporting module. And we have all three at this particular point in time. We have had our current system since 1999. The system prior to that was not Y2K compliant, so we went to Logistics Systems in November of 1999 and implemented the current system. As time has gone on, there have certainly been discussions over the years about regionalization, and with the events of the economy over the past few years, that has become more and more important of a discussion to be had. And so from a leadership perspective, we had our assessment done in 2004. One of the recommendations in that assessment was to take a look at our technology and see what we really wanted to do with that. Did we want to move forward with technology, or did we want to really not kind of come back to paper and a pencil kind of a system? So we recognized at that point that there were some shortcomings in the system, and certainly we wanted to move forward. As time has gone on, the increase in prices of those systems for an agency our size have increased dramatically. What we're looking at now, if we just go and purchase our own RMS system, we're looking at $1 million plus. And that's a lot of money. So as we continue to look at these regionalizing efforts, we have found a couple of things that I think really makes the business case and the community that we serve and the public safety efforts here more efficient, more streamlined, which then allows us to better serve our community. These efforts in regionalization began in 2005, and it became really clear to us that we're not able to, the city's not able to afford $1 million plus for a records management system. So this was discussed amongst the chiefs and CEOs of the county who were in very similar circumstances. And we said, well, let's talk about regionalizing this effort. And what does that mean from a business case point of view? Well, what it means is that certainly for our department, is that it would cost less for us to go to a regionalized system. We would be getting a top tier system, which we don't have right now. And when you compare that $1 million plus figure to what we've included in the memo to you this evening, the costs for us are probably right now through 2017 is going to be approximately $247,000. So compare that to the $1 million plus, and certainly that's one of our financial impacts that will be of benefit to all of us. We currently have an annual software maintenance with Logistics Systems for just about $89,000 a year. That increase over the past several years has been pretty consistent with a 3% increase. So we're figuring here in the future we'll be seeing annual 3% increases to that particular maintenance. We have budgeted money in the 2014 budget and the 2015 budget of right around $97,000, which would be our contribution to the consortium that has been formed. That consortium consists of 6 different agencies that we would be joining up with. So I think that it's really to our advantage to take a hard look and a serious look at continuing on with this project. For the new system, which has been selected, And what we did to select that system was agency representatives from those 6 agencies designated folks to be part of a selection committee. We provided a records supervisor to this team to go out and look at prospective vendors. The vendor has been chosen. It's an excellent vendor, and our ongoing maintenance costs for Niche, which is the new system for support and maintenance, hardware sustainability, and a system administrator, would be approximately $52,600 a year. Currently, we have IT support from the city. We have our own system administrator. And certainly when we come and regionalize this effort, that will really help, and that consortium will provide a system administrator and the IT support to make this thing happen. So the 6 agencies are Arvada, Golden, Lakewood, Wheat Ridge, and Edgewater. Jefferson County Sheriff's Department was part of this group, and they're not able to participate at this time, which I think their current plans are is to come into this consortium in the next couple years. They had some financial constraints that came to them that kind of delayed their participation in the program. So I think we represent about 13% of the consortium. That's what the fees are based on sworn numbers. The system, you pay per sworn member, and you need a minimum of 500 sworn to even get to look at this system. This is a very robust system. It's done internationally as well as throughout the United States. So I think with those costs that are involved and what I've briefly given you, that there'll be a significant cost savings for us in this project. The proposed IGAs have been reviewed by the attorneys for each city, and we'll be bringing the proposed IGA to City Council in early 2015.
And actually, that's scheduled for January 12th.
There we go. Thank you. So I wanted to come and just give you a little information about the system, answer any questions that you may have. And this is an awesome opportunity for the police department, for our community to move forward in the provision of police services.
And do we have questions for Mr. Kessler from council? Yes, we do. Ms. Langworthy.
So I have a quick question, because I think we've heard about this kind of before, so this is in many ways just a refresher, but I thought my understanding was the current system that we have may have an in-life at some point where they may not be able to support it, and this just not necessarily immediately, but some future in-life, and that this new system is going to ensure, a stronger program.
Well, I think it provides a stronger RMS system going forward because of the current technology that it employs. What logistics systems is going to do in terms of being a company, I don't know. But certainly this is, it's not the top premier system, but it's a very top level system and will carry us many years into the future.
Mr. Starker.
Thank you, Mr. Casa, for coming to explain this to us. So if kind of to run through the numbers, we're paying lodges this $88,000 or $89,000 a year now. And on top of that, we have a member of the staff to maintain that. So we have sort of one full-time and one FTE that maintains that system.
I think it's an FTE or pretty close to it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so then when we go into the niche system, we cut back to about $52,000 or $53,000 annually for that.
Yes.
And so that seems like quite a savings there.
Yes.
Why would we wait until 2017 in order to go online with that?
The initial schedule was to begin the process in January of 2015. That has been delayed in terms of contract preparation, IGA preparation. We're expecting to begin the project around April now. With 6 agencies, there are some agencies, for example, Golden is also one of these agencies. Golden and Edgewater need a RMS system yesterday. We are in a position to where our platform of all of them is pretty stable. So we have the opportunity to wait a little longer before implementation. So we would do Edgewater and Golden towards the end of 2015. In 16, the other agencies would come on. And the reason, again, that we're the final implementation is out of all the platforms of these agencies, we have currently the most stable. But I think the costs that we're budgeting now are certainly for those infrastructure costs and development of the system that will make this come to fruition.
In sort of negotiating with Niche and their program, which I assume is hardware and software, is there sort of a depreciation factor built into the cost so that at the end of some other timeline that we would have paid as we go to keep the system operational and up to snuff, if you will? Or do we get to a point 5 or 10 years down the road and, well, Niche is sort of down the way and we find ourselves without where we are today?
Right, but Niche is software. We've included the hardware costs into this, so you're certainly going to have that hardware replacement as time moves on. The software, what comes with this agreement is upgrades and continuing on with taking advantage of the technological things that come in the future with that. So Niche is really a software in and of itself. Will there be depreciation on the equipment? Certainly. But I think it's the annual maintenance costs that include development of future technology to make this a long-term commitment, not only for Niche, but for us.
And then I guess my last question has to do sort of with customer service or performance, and I assume the customers in this case are really the Wheat Ridge Police Department in the generation of the reports and the data that you all need to manage.
That's true, but I think there's also an extension of that to the community that we serve. We're going to be able to use more statistics from this system for our deployment of personnel. We're going to be able to use this system to provide information to people who want that information or need that information more efficiently and more rapidly. So I think the end user, if you will, is certainly the community in that regard. The other piece of that from a public safety point of view is that combining these databases, if you will, into one single database, we're going to be able to check when appropriate what's going on with individuals that we contact. Because a lot of folks, they move from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So it's going to give us an opportunity now to really get a better look at what we're dealing with and to share information with other agencies that I believe will be really, really important in solving other crimes.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
So you're saying that in addition to being streamlined and more efficient, we'll be able to be more informed about what is going on with various individuals as they go through various other cities?
Yes.
Okay. And I have a question. Mr. Schultz had his arm up a little earlier.
Hi, I'm just curious. Thanks for the information. It sounds like a good thing to do conceptually. But we still have paper records as well as electronic records.
Yes.
Will Wheat Ridge's paper records remain here? And will the system provide a search capability for those, or will it also provide electronic permanent records?
Right. That's a great question. Thank you for asking the data conversion piece. The archived records at this particular point that are microfilmed will remain that way. We are now looking at, there's a number of options for data conversion. We know that taking data from our current system into the new system is cost prohibitive. It's very expensive, costs a lot of money to do that, and we're looking now at various options to be able to integrate our current system with the niche system so that we can query the old system. I would guess that for a while the logistics system will remain for us, but that's as we continue to research that, I think we're coming up with some viable options to maintaining Logisys over the long term. Great question, thank you.
I think I have a question from Mr. Fitzgerald, and then let's figure out what we need to do to.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Fitzgerald?
So does the narrative here says that the sheriff is not joining because he needs a prison module or a jail module. Is that right?
You mean in terms of the software?
Yeah.
There is a module that is for jail management. What I'm aware of is that they have some other budget things that have come up, and this certainly is part of it, that they're just not able to make that financial commitment.
So
now.
it's there, they just can't buy it right now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, do we share records with the sheriff now?
Oh, yeah.
All the time?
And that's an integral
and the
part.
other cities that are going to be in this?
Yes, I mean, people that we take to jail, they go to the Jefferson County Jail. That's where they're temporarily housed. So we're there every day, not only with custody reports and those kinds of things, but there's a great connection.
No, but if you
between
stop
investigative
somebody
files.
for a ticket or something and you want to look up their record, can you see records other than Wheat Ridge?
Yes,
Okay.
we can.
And what is the field reporting system? Is that just the policeman in a car who types up his contact report?
Yes, we have computers in the car, and they can do their reports right from the field instead of having to come to the department.
I believe this is mostly informational, but do we have other questions?
Yes. This may be a question for Patrick, but my understanding was we had a line item for $235,000 in the 2015 budget to cover this system. And then the total cost mentioned in the memo is $246,000 with a payment in 2015 at $86,000.
That's my tip.
We did. Good catch, Mr. Urban. Yes, after we caught that after the fact. After I saw this memo, I asked staff. I said, "Why did you budget for the full amount?" They essentially budgeted for the full amount all 4 years in 2015. So we just those monies won't be spent. It's out of the equipment replacement fund. So those monies will just go back into the fund balance. The only amount that's going to be spent is next year is the 86,000. So.
And then the difference between the 246 and the 235, what was that?
The numbers have changed kind of daily until we got final numbers. So that was the number we had at the time.
And then it's mentioned here that our sworn membership in that consortium is 13%. Is that the number used to calculate our percentage of the cost?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
And how does that percentage of sworn officers relate to the amount of activity that we would have in that same system? Is it equivalent to that, or is it reasonable to suspect that the usage level may not be 13%, that it could be some other percentage? Does that impact, is the cost that we have associated with this set, or if we use it more than somebody else does down the road, does that affect what our costs are for this system?
The price is set. What we have currently at this point in the memo, and again, the reason why the figures changed was the initial ones included Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, and then with them not being able to participate right now, then we reallocated what that budget would be. In terms of usage and pricing, that has nothing to do with the price. It's squarely on number of sworn personnel.
Okay. And then I think that's the only questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
One other question over here.
Well, I had a question kind of similar to the sworn officers. So every year, are the sworn officers in each jurisdiction counted, and then could the amounts change is I guess what I'm asking, based on how many officers the city has?
I think the amounts could change.
Okay.
You know, we've been pretty consistent in our number
Staffing.
of our staffing.
Okay.
So I don't think the changes there would be significant one way or the other.
Not enough to make a difference,
Not
okay.
enough to make
But the IGA could be looked at annually, and if there's major changes,
Okay.
we'd bring that back.
Okay. And then I was able to listen to the presentation on the 911 regionalization. So this is a similar model, is that?
It's a similar
somewhat?
model.
Okay. So on that one, it is being centrally maintained. So who is maintaining this system?
The hardware pieces of this are going to be maintained by the city of Arvada.
And then is our yearly payment, is that taking care of that person to manage that?
There will be a separate system administrator to take care of the software management. The hardware pieces will remain with the city of Arvada, as far as we know at this particular time. So I'm not, was your
Well, we
question-
don't think we'll see a fluctuation in these amounts here based on
Based on what we know now.
based on what we know now. Okay.
I think those are good.
Okay, that was my question.
All right. Any other questions? We'll be seeing the IGA in January.
Yeah, January 12th, or yes, January 12th.
Thank you, Joe. Very
Thank you.
informative.
Have a good evening.
Mr. Lorenz?
We apologize. Dan Brennan was going to present both these, but I'm glad Joe and Jim are here this evening. Mr. Brennan is very ill and is at home. But this next item is traffic accidents in Wheat Ridge. We've had a lot of attentions brought to this issue in the last few weeks, and we've had some incidences in the city, and the police department has recently brought on a crime analyst in the last couple of years, and we're able to really pull together data on different metrics across the city, and so we do have a report from our crime analyst, and Jim's going to discuss that and talk about the different incidents that are happening across the city and where they're happening, and some plans to move forward. Thanks.
Good evening, Jim Lorenz, Division Chief, the other Division Chief. And my role is the patrol division, which is basically everybody in uniform, and it includes the community services unit. Thanks to the people that have stuck around and are interested in this particular topic. We appreciate your input. As Mr. Goff said, this is put together by our crime analyst and the chief is under the weather and can't be here. He's probably watching us on camera right now, so I may get a call. You don't know what could happen here, but we're going to talk about specifically about auto pedestrian accident statistics here in Wheat Ridge. And what we have done is looked at the past 2 years, January 2012 up to the end of 2014 here. So we see that accidents involving cars and pedestrians or bicycles account for about 1.3% of those, or 60 accidents statewide or citywide. 41 of those involved an automobile and a pedestrian, and 19 involved an automobile and a bicycle. 55% of those accidents, the driver of the automobile was at fault, so just a little over half. And as you can see, that some of the and you know, we're not really in the business of determining fault. That's more like an insurance term. We're talking about specific violations that might have occurred that attribute to that particular accident. At least 40% of those accidents result in injury. Obviously, if a car hits a person on a bicycle or a pedestrian, you're going to see injuries. So rather than cars hitting cars, it's a little safer to be in a car, obviously. And in 5% of those accidents, we see that drivers of those automobiles were cited for DUI. And that was true in our recent 2 fatalities that we have had in the city. We had both drivers involved in those accidents were driving under the influence. I'm sorry? back. This is a good point that majority of the accidents, they occur at or near intersections. And 48% of those accidents occurring within crosswalks. So when we're talking about bicycles and pedestrian, about a quarter of those accidents would occur in crosswalks, half of the half, if you follow that. And then this is a map that will show exactly where those accidents have occurred. You see the auto ped accidents, which includes bicycles, are the yellow, and the two red are the fatalities that we have had. Now these are specific intersections where accidents have occurred. 44th and Kipling. This is just over the past 2 years, since January 2012. We have had, excuse me, 6 accidents that have occurred there. And looking again at that term fault, who was actually cited or who may have created that accident, we see that it's divided 50-50. 3 autos and 2 pedestrians, 1 bicycle were involved in those. When we look at the cause, those are the specific violations that we see. So when we're dealing with pedestrians and the bicyclist, it is crossing, basically that would be a jaywalking kind of situation. And the bicycle was failure to follow the traffic control signal. And when we're looking at the autos, they're in violation of crosswalks in all 3 of those cases. Failure to yield to the pedestrian in the crosswalk. 38th and Wadsworth, we see basically the same thing. 6 accidents, were 4 of those with autos involved. And with the graphic, you can see exactly where they locate within that intersection, where they're mapped out. Not all of them at the same place, but related to that intersection. 44th and Wadsworth, 7 accidents at that location. Again, kind of split between autos. Actually, this one is heavier on the pedestrians and the bicycles at looking at faults involved there. If you have any questions, please jump right in. And we'll talk about specifically crosswalks. We had 13 accidents that involved pedestrians, 3 accidents with a bicycle. 80% of the drivers of the automobiles were at fault. A lot of that is because state law says that pedestrians in a crosswalk have the right-of-way. So more than likely, the pedestrian is going to have the right-of-way, and the vehicle is going to be at fault. At least 6 of the pedestrian and bicyclists were injured. Again, that pretty much stands to reason. Here are our 2 fatalities that occurred. We had one that occurred October the 21st, and then one almost 1 month later, November the 23rd. And both of those fatalities involved pedestrians. Both of the accidents involved DUI drivers. Both of those drivers were under the influence of alcohol. And in both cases, there was fault, or there was responsibility on both parts, the pedestrians and the drivers. The pedestrians in both cases were in the roadway. They were going down the roadway. They're in a place where it was not safe for them to be, and the drivers, of course, were DUI, and there were some other traffic violations involved. So that kind of concludes our discussion about
pedestrian accidents. Now, you just have some statistics on accidents, citywide statistics that occur. And what we're looking at is a chart showing accidents from 2009 up to the present. We've got kind of a squiggly line that shows accidents are up and down, but for the most part have risen, obviously, since 2009. Why do accidents go up and down like that? Well, the answer is if there was one thing that stopped traffic accidents, let's just do that. Let's fix that. But the problem is that there are so many variables involved in traffic accidents. Could be weather conditions, could be drinking and driving, could be engineering issues with roadways. So many different variables, and sometimes more than one variable that attribute to that accident. It's very difficult to determine, how many accidents are we going to have this year? And so this is the type of thing that we see. But we have more traffic. We have more traffic than we have had in the past. As traffic increases, there's more congestion in the roadways, which I think you probably see that in Wheat Ridge driving around. And when you're driving around, particularly at rush hour, you say, boy, there's a lot of cars here and it's really crowded. So that trend is increasing, and intersection-related accidents have steadily risen since 2012. The most common accident citations that we write, when we would determine who's responsible for this accident, or we determined if there is a violation that has occurred, it is normally careless driving, following too closely, and failure to yield. Those are the things that cause accidents. Careless driving tends to be kind of a catch-all for a variety of different things. If we see several violations that have occurred, we generally write those into court as a catch-all of careless driving. That could be 2 or 3 different issues that combine to say this driver was not operating a vehicle in a careful manner. Following too closely is another one that is pretty specific. Rear-end accidents are very high. One of the things that's kind of strange about following too closely is that's one of those charges that we can't really enforce until after you crash. The way the law reads, and when we take that to court, when we take that to municipal court or county court, what the judge wants to see is how can you show that the person was operating dangerously if no accident occurred? How can you say that they were following too closely? They didn't crash. But when they do crash, it's real easy to prove that. So most rear-end accidents get that following too closely summons. And failure to yield. You probably, every time you stop at a red light, you probably see somebody do a violation these days. I know I do when I'm on my way home, when I'm driving. It's just amazing at how many red light violations you see. And those are those, left turn in front of somebody, trying to catch that light, and bang, we have accidents. So most common accidents are, sorry about that, front to rear, rear-ending somebody, following too closely. Front to side, that would be those failure to yield kinds of T-bone accidents, and even side-to-side collisions. And here we can see kind of hot spots of accidents. These are citywide accidents, 2012, 2013, and 2014. And you can see that they follow a very similar pattern. They're on those main corridors in our city. I think one of the things that's kind of interesting is 38th Avenue, particularly west of Kipling, seems to be a little safer, a little less accidents out there. And for the most part, everything else is pretty solid. Over the course of the year, you get an accident pretty much everywhere in town. This graph is called a hotspot graph. It shows you when are we having the most accidents, on what day and what time. And that helps us in planning, staffing, trying to figure out when are the best times for police officers to be out. We know the intersections that have the most accidents. So if we know what date and time, those would be good times for us to be out there. So the peak days of the week, you can see kind of fall between where it's kind of red. You'll see that between Wednesday, Tuesday. Pretty much they happen every day, Monday through Friday. Weekends are a little bit lighter. You can see on Sunday and Saturday. And then the time of the day, you can see that most accidents occur between 1500, this is military time, that would be 3 o'clock, between 3 and 5 o'clock, and that is obviously rush hour. So again, we're talking about the common accident citations and the types of accidents. Again, we've already seen that on the earlier slide. Intersection related, auto, pedestrian, bicycle accidents, they account for 2.2% of all intersection related accidents. So we talked earlier about the 1.3% of just auto ped accidents. This is auto peds that occur at intersections, which account for 2.2% of the accidents. Not a high number, but is any number a good thing when we're talking about these kinds of things? And that's all I have for you. I did want to talk about the police department meets with Public Works and Community Development on a monthly basis, where we sit at a round table and we talk about where are the hot spots, what can we do about them. Enforcement is a great tool, but I'm not going to tell you that it's the best tool, because you know for yourself, when you're sitting there at that intersection and the light turns red and you see somebody run that red light, where's the cops? All right, they're never around when you need them, right? We can't be everywhere. So how can we develop things that are effective in keeping our city safe? And a couple of those ways, obviously engineering and education. If we can educate the public, if we can change the way people drive, I think you'll see a better impact on traffic accidents. We can't afford to operate a traffic unit 24/7 and try to hit these intersections all the time. And in fact, right now, the chief wanted me to point out to you that because of staffing issues that we're currently going through, we're not even able to operate our crime and traffic team. You've heard us talk about the CAT team. We call it the crime and traffic team. We can't operate that right now fully staffed. We've got to transfer some of those people into regular patrol so that we can just handle our call load right now. So service requests on traffic kinds of issues will probably be limited until, let me say, April. We've got 4 people in training that just graduated from the academy. We've got to get them trained up, and then we may be able to transfer some folks back to work specifically traffic and specific crime, directed patrol kinds of things.
Does council have questions of Division Chief Lorenz?
Yeah, I think I've covered everything that the chief had
Mr.
asked.
Urban, I saw a hand over there first.
Questions?
Yes. You mentioned that we have roughly 60 bicycle pedestrian related auto accidents out of 4,500 total accidents. And that's about 1.3%. Is that out of the ordinary or an area of concern, or how does that rank with other areas of accidents in other cities, or how does that compare?
Yeah, I have not done any comparison on other cities, and I think that is interesting information to know that if we could see what that is. I couldn't really tell you how that might compare. And obviously, it's going to compare with different types of roadways that we have. You know, here in Wheat Ridge, we have a distinct advantage, I think, geographically, that we sit right on the west side, and we get those major, you know, north-south roadways. We have Wadsworth, Kipling, and a lot of people travel on those. Other cities don't have that kind of a thing, or I-70 going through town. So we get a lot of traffic. We are a major place that people, you know, all over the metro area, they are here at some time during the day. How can we compare that to another city like, say, Edgewater or even Arvada? Arvada is very close to us, but they don't necessarily have the same kind of thoroughfares and the same kind of traffic issues that we have. So it's difficult. We can certainly try, and we could get you some numbers and say per capita in this particular city how many accidents there are.
Well, I think
Sorry,
my follow-up to that is, are there other areas within the situation where there are fatalities that aren't related to bike and pedestrian but are car-and-car fatalities, or are there other areas that are more impactful to the community than this, where
than just auto pedestrian types of accidents?
Right. Or how many auto fatalities have we had in the past 2 years total?
Yeah, and I don't know exactly how to answer that. I guess I would say that certainly when you have auto pedestrian accident or auto bicycle accidents, because the potential for injury is so much greater, it's difficult to survive getting hit by a car.
Sure.
It's bad. There's better safety situations within a car. So concentrating on those areas would protect people and save lives. So that's obviously very important. In the scope of traffic accidents across the city, it may not be a huge percentage.
Okay.
Genevieve.
Last week I met with Candace, who's the principal over at Compass Montessori, and regarding the student that was hit in the crosswalk over there, we were discussing, and I don't know, maybe you already have looked into this or considered it, a light at that crosswalk that isn't a regularly scheduled light, but that could be activated by a push button during those 2 times of day when students are crossing. Is that something that you and Public Works look into, or could that be discussed?
So interestingly enough, we had our meeting today with Public Works and Community Development. We talked specifically about that. That has a crosswalk now. It does have a push button. It is, I think what Public Works refers to that as a first generation type. There are better types now. And a good example is 38th and Benton. 38th and Benton has the nice wide crosswalk. It has the addition of signs that say state law, yield to pedestrians. It lights up on both sides, front and back. It even lights up on the sides so that the pedestrians inside the crosswalk can see those lights come on. So it's clearly a better system, and I know that Public Works is going to look into that, but I don't know exactly what we would have to do to make that happen. Is it financially reasonable for us to do under the circumstances? You know, we don't know all of that right now. I know that they specifically talked about improvements that were going to go in the walkways there by that school, and so if we can work that in as part of that, that seems like a win-win kind of situation.
Okay. I was just curious if we could find out what the results were of what they looked into, so that, you know, we could let the school know.
And I didn't specifically talk about that accident. That was an accident where a child was hit, was not killed, but had a pretty serious injury as a result of that. And that was one vehicle stopped. It was eastbound, stopped for the crosswalk. Another car was behind that car and then chose to pass and struck the child. So, yeah.
And then another question. I'm just curious, do we differentiate between a DUI and a DUID in our record keeping, or does the state? I'm just curious.
We do, it's a different charge.
It is, okay.
And we do keep statistics of different numbers there.
Okay.
Mr. DiTullio has a question.
Does that section on 44th have the flashing lights for the 20 miles per hour, or is that just a crosswalk?
That at 44th and Miller?
Right.
I believe it's just a crosswalk there.
It's just a crosswalk, yeah.
Because in the past we've allocated funds for the flashing lights on Pierce Street for St. Peter and Paul School.
Right.
And I think if that would be a possibility, I think council should look at maybe installing the flashing lights on that section near the school, if that would help.
I asked the chief about that, if that's a possibility, and he said that could be looked into, definitely. Yeah, it's just a flashing crosswalk sign, but the speed limit's the same, stays at 30, 35.
Well, I meant that during the school hours.
Yes, exactly, to go down to 20.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So that would be an option?
Yep.
So can we get some more information on that and
Yep.
bring it forth?
Yep.
So we have 2 areas of information we're looking at. Any other questions? Ms. Davis?
Every day. And 38th isn't the bad part. It's 38th and Wadsworth that's the bad part. And that turn lane, because Wadsworth gets backed up. But I think you probably see that at a lot of intersections, but that one's really bad. You go to other cities and they have those cameras that take photos.
We've discussed that one.
Yes. A controversial subject in a lot of cities about whether photo radar or photo red light is a good thing or a bad thing. Certainly we had talked about such a program a few years ago and brought a proposal in, and it didn't look like a thing we wanted to do at that time.
The council of that time.
All we need to do is borrow the signs. We don't actually need the program.
Right. We'll have a little fake camera. Yeah, without a.
These are techniques that have been done. We in fact, we did a pilot program a couple of years ago out on, if you remember, it was the Drive 65 campaign that we did. That was kind of an award-winning program that we put together, and that was one of the things that we did. Was we had one of the cars that doesn't run very well that we sat up there, and does it work? It's difficult to say. As I said, it's really difficult to determine how many violations we prevent. Preventing crime or preventing violations is difficult to count, so it's kind of hard to say. I think if you're talking about enforcement, certainly what I learned in college is, if you're talking about enforcement of traffic violations, is the certainty that if you violate, you will be caught and you will get a summons. That is what prevents people from an enforcement perspective. And most people think that you can probably get away with it. And so if you, for example, when you drive home tonight and you think, if you don't stop at that stop sign, you're definitely going to get a ticket. You're going to stop. So, how do we get that message to the community? Is a difficult educational problem.
If I may ask, you noted that accidents are up in Wheat Ridge, and I realize that we're in a situation with these major corridors that we are really subject to a lot of traffic. I was wondering about other cities overall, and then how much information has been gathered as to cell phones being a part of that increase in accidents?
Yeah, another thing that's really difficult to say. We know that distracted driving and, many forms of distracted driving, people shaving, putting on makeup, eating, cell phones. There are so many distractions in driving. Sometimes we wonder that, the auto industry makes driving safer and safer and safer, and it makes people more and more complacent when they drive and feel like maybe they can do these multitasking kinds of things when they drive. It's difficult to prove those kinds of cases, to prove that when somebody's involved in an accident, they were on the phone at the time. We have certainly tried to do enforcement on distracted driving with our new SUV police vehicles. You sit up a little higher, you can drive right alongside people and just look out the window and you can see them sitting there operating their phone. It's incredible. I know you see it when you stop at a traffic intersection. What do you see? The tops of everybody's heads because they're looking at their phone on their lap. I mean, it's
Oh, Mr. Urban.
In the chart where we talked about the increase in accidents over time, it indicated a January to November timeframe. What is that?
January to November?
Yeah, the chart said January to November, not, it looked as though it was.
Oh, was that for just 2014? Because we're not there yet?
It looked like it was an annual, right there it says January to November yearly accidents. So is there a purpose in excluding December from that?
So it's apples to apples.
Apples to apples, like to like.
Okay,
So-
I see, right. I see what we're saying. So we've left out December so that we can compare with our 2014
Has that impacted
stats.
any, I mean, do we have significantly more accidents in December than we do in other months, or what's that average compared?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have those here. This is a typical thing that a crime analyst would do, is make sure that they're comparing things fairly so that that would fit in. But we can certainly determine if there's more accidents in December. We can get that information for you.
I think that at the beginning of the year it would be, it just seems odd that we would lop off a month each year. We're not knowing that if that month is higher or lower than average.
Right.
How that-
Well, and we could do analysis just on 2009 through 13, where we have full 12 month.
Oh, okay.
And we'll provide that to you.
Any further questions? Nope.
Jerry had his hand up.
Do you need a consensus to bring forth that information and cost?
No, it's already being looked at.
Okay, thank you, Officer Lorenz. And we're close to the end of this meeting. The only other thing left is elected officials reports. Do we have anything in those areas? Mr. DiTullio does.
I had two things to quickly bring up. I think a while back, the city council talked about passing an ordinance which would allow us to hang banners and information and stuff on the Excel-owned lights on 38th and 29th. And I just wanted to find out, are we going to look at bringing that ordinance forward?
I can speak to that if you'd like. I actually have coffee on Friday with Excel to discuss. They have some other options. They recently came to agreement with the city of Commerce City on an agreement that's not the Northglenn model, but so they have some options. So I want to see what those options are before we bring it forward too. They don't like the Northglenn option. So, but they do.
The ordinance.
Yes, they do have other options. So as soon as after I meet with them, I'll bring that back to you.
Good. Thank you. And then the other question I had is, we've had two study sessions, or actually the retreat and the study session discussing increasing our code enforcement presence. And then in the budget, we really didn't address adding any code enforcement officers. I just wanted to find out, does it make sense to look at the staffing from a permit technician and two dispatchers to look at modifying one of those positions to the code enforcement officer, as we had talked about, that was a priority of this city council, was more active code enforcement within the city. I just wanted to see where we were at on that.
Yeah, it's always an option. We do have scheduled for January 5th to bring back our initial discussion on code enforcement strategies.
January 5th?
January 5th, so we can discuss it in more detail there.
Okay.
If you'd like.
I'm trying to remember, didn't the city add some code people didn't we add people this year?
We have, just for the summer, just seasonal. And they've been primarily focused on park enforcement, which we haven't been able to do very, very well. But we've been getting more and more comments and complaints about parks, and especially with the new Discovery Park and behaviors of certain individuals. And so it's really helped this last summer. So something that we want to continue, I believe. But yeah, if we want to move forward with any aggressive code enforcement programs, we're definitely going to need more staffing and other resources. And not sure where we'll find those resources today.
Well, I guess what I would ask is that when you bring forth that code enforcement, you look at a cost-benefit analysis of not having the permit technician versus the two dispatch folks, and see if we could swap out one or two with the code officer, if that's an option. Just look at the different costs and the cost benefits of not having one versus the other. Because, the permit technician, I understand, but that's economic driven, where you have a good economy, you're getting a lot of permits, where code enforcement's been an issue all the time.
Yeah, it's a priority. I think that council's going to have to discuss.
I think council will have to.
There's the
I've got two others out there. Go ahead. Ms. Fitzgerald.
Just for information, the vehicle we took out of the budget was a code enforcement vehicle.
Oh, interesting.
a new vehicle, correct?
Right. And Ms. Davis, is that a, I'm looking at her all night thinking she wants, yeah, we're grateful for some things. Yeah, okay. She's looking cranky down there. Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to gauge council's interest in renewing a discussion around the construction defect bill that Lakewood was able to put forward, and looking at what Wheat Ridge can do to encourage the development of condos within Wheat Ridge and how we can move forward with that. I know that the state legislator is looking at a variety of different options, but I don't think we can wait for them to make a decision. It would be prudent on our part to at least consider what our options are and bring that forth to a study session as soon as possible, and wanted to see what people's thoughts were on that.
Talked to somebody at Lakewood, and they did say, somebody on Lakewood City Council, and she did say they're receiving a ton of calls from a lot of cities. So it's probably information they've already gathered and can give us easily to look at, but definitely I'd be interested in.
I'd support it.
Yeah, it sounds like we have an interest in that area, and I agree we should at least kind of know what our options are, what is being done, where we're at.
We'll add that to
Especially with a
future
TOD.
agenda.
Yep, please. Is that good for you? Okay.
So I hated to cut you off, but I wasn't done yet when Patrick was answering the question. So do you want a consensus for the cost benefit analysis of those three positions or four? Do you want to just bring that forward in January 5th?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want staff to do a full cost benefit analysis of the positions, I think we can have a discussion about it. I mean, that's your purview to bring up when we have that discussion. But if well, yeah, we have the cost of what those positions. They're in the budget today, so.
Are you asking what those comparable salaries are so we can look at it?
Yeah. 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 Well, that's a discussion you're going to have a higher priority. And yeah, we have those costs.
One more.
Mr. Urban.
Just for the residents at home, the Jefferson County Public Schools will be having hearings or public input meetings for them specifically. On December 18th, it'll be at Wheat Ridge Middle School, Wheat Ridge 5-8, from 6 to 8 p.m. On January 6th at Edgewater Elementary School from 6 to 8 p.m. January 8th at Jefferson High School, again from 6 to 8. And on January 15th at Lumberg Elementary School. And I would encourage all residents in the affected area to attend that and provide input as they see fit to allow the school district to understand better what our thoughts and concerns are as a community. And it's critical that they attend those types of meetings in order for their input to be considered as they go forward, because it does seem, based on what we heard tonight, that there is an openness and willingness to work with us as a city to determine what's best for us as a city. And so the only way that can happen is if residents show up to those meetings and provide their input, not just the one in Wheat Ridge, but the other meetings as well, to make sure that we are heard and that they're considering our points of view in this process. That's it.
So the meetings dates you mentioned are the innovation plan discussion meetings. Thank you.
Those are on the city's website too.
And yes, they're on our city website. Wonderful. Anything else?
And then one last thing, do we have an update on the latest fugitive that was shooting up the neighborhood? What was Killjoy or?
I don't know. Do Mr. Lawrence?
It's gone. Still looking.
Still looking.
Do we have any indication that he's still within the city of Wheat Ridge, or that he's moved on elsewhere, or? I don't want to get in the middle of a active investigation, but I just want to make sure the community is safe. Okay. Thank you.
This was really a call for reports from committees. Do I have anything? Housing? Nope. Renewal Wheat Ridge? Okay. We'll look at that for one in January so we can kind of be up to date. I believe we can say the meeting is done for the night.
Thank you.